Chapter 35. Front Gate. "We have a live one over here," the medic called out. Sergeant Lee ran over to where the medic stood. They both looked down at a man trying to crawl through the back hatch of what remained of the flipped SUV. "Take care of him. We need to find out what he knows." As he turned to another soldier, Lee said, "Let Sergeant Karnik knows we have a prisoner, and we will bring him to the gym once he is stable." "Roger, Sergeant," the young soldier said as he set off at a full run to deliver his message. Looking around at the destruction and thinking about what needed to be done next, Sergeant Lee took charge and called out orders. "When you have the prisoner stable, take 2 men and escort him to the gym. Specialist, let's get that vehicle off the road. We can use it for cover." "Gunners, are you ready to receive guests?" Seeing that they were still reloading the 240 Bravo machine gun and knowing the answer didn't stop Lee from asking, instead it was more of a strong suggestion to get ready. "Almost there, Sergeant," the lead gunner cried out in response. "When they arrive, nobody fires until I do. I fire first and then we open up. Got it?" "Yes, Sergeant," came to him from all directions, and Lee knew they would be ready as he watched the preparations quickly being made. Then Lee watched as 2 men passed him with their prisoner. Sergeant Lee still couldn't believe that the Strong Cities Network, a branch of the United Nations, was operating within the borders of the United States. "Who are you?" the prisoner asked Lee as he dragged him along. Without thinking, Lee simply replied, "We, sir, are Americans," and waved the men along as he returned to securing the front gate. The prisoner's weary eyes followed the stares of disdain and contempt. Every step weighed him down, not just by the shackles binding his wrists and ankles, but by the weight of their judgment. The stinging sensation of being despised was great, almost as much as the ache from the visible bruises covering his body. When the gym's door creaked open, the cold draft was a brief relief from the oppressive atmosphere inside. But the relief was short-lived. Soon as his captors released him, the unforgiving floor met his crumpled body. He groaned, but mustered the energy to glance up, catching the sights of boots and hearing hushed conversations. Before long, the subtle but distinctive sound of Karnik's measured footsteps echoed through the gym. Every soldier present knew that walk, confident and powerful. The heavy doors at the end swung open, revealing Karnik in his usual military attire, flanked by the imposing figure of the colonel and a handful of other high-ranking officials. Karnik's cold eyes surveyed the scene before him, eventually resting on the pitiable state of the prisoner. The atmosphere in the gym grew even tenser, and a heavy silence settled, interrupted only by the labored breathing of the battered man on the floor. Everyone waited, anticipating the next move in this high-stakes game. His eyes drawn to the entrance at the other end, the prisoner looked to see what was heading his way. Still dazed by the flipping of his vehicle and from the low angle of the gym floor, he couldn't believe his eyes. The first man who entered looked as if his head were going to hit the lights high above, which caused fear to take hold of the prisoner. Then the prisoner focused on his bloodied uniform and thought of how little hope he had of walking away from this place. "Pick him up." The sound of Karnik's voice terrified the prisoner that much more. The prisoner moaned as the soldiers grabbed hold underneath his arms to raise him to his feet. All the while, he attempted to prepare himself for the worst. From the standing position, the prisoner could see that his eyes and mind were playing tricks on him. The man wasn't even close to the ceiling in height, but still tall enough to tower over him. "What is your name?" Karnik asked in a strong bass voice. Looking the man up and down, Karnik saw clearly that the prisoner had to be in pain as he stood silently supported by his men. While making his observation, Karnik ordered, "Bring me a chair," and continued to watch the man. Neither said a word. Sitting down brought more groans from the prisoner as the 2 soldiers lowered him to the seat. The prisoner looked up at Karnik, who once again looked taller than he really was. "Grazie," the prisoner said as he settled into the seat. "Prego," Karnik replied, that being one of the very few words he remembered from his time in Italy. "So, my friend, what is your purpose here?" "I say nothing," the prisoner said with only a touch of an Italian accent. "Your English is pretty good. Where did you study?" "I say nothing," the prisoner again replied. Looking over to one of the men who had just carried him up, Karnik said, "Get us some coffee, would you?" As if it were a question, not an order. Seeing the reaction on the man seated before him, Karnik could tell this was going to be easy. While he is getting the coffee, which I have got to warn you is not going to be good, but it does the job. How about we just relax? Karnik let out a little laugh as if he and the prisoner were old chums. He didn't bother to ask further questions, and within minutes, an aroma flooded the gym, followed by the soldier holding the cup. "Thank you, Private," Karnik said as he took the 2 cups, held one out to the Italian, and took a sip of his own. After a little hesitation, the prisoner reached out for the cup presented to him and began to drink slowly. "You are right to have warned me," the Italian stated as he took another drink. As the warmth of the drink made its way down, he could feel himself loosen up just a little. "Well, I have had worse," Karnik said with a smile on his face. Me too, me too." The Italian chuckled a little as he spoke. Karnik observed that the man looked much older than him, and Karnik thought it strange that they would send someone of his age anywhere. "How did you end up here?" Karnik asked with real curiosity. After a few seconds and another sip, Karnik could tell that the coffee had worked. "You mean for a man my age?" It was also obvious to Karnik that the man was no fool. "I am Luciano. You know what it means, me?" the Italian asked Karnik as he took another sip. Once he was done, the prisoner didn't wait for a reply before answering. "Light of the day." Karnik stood and tried to understand how the prisoner's light of the day connected to current events. Did it mean a new beginning here? Did it mean the new light of the day will bring change? What? The questions kept coming to Karnik as he thought about it, to the point that he had to ask, how does that connect to everything going on now? Taking a sip, the man looked at Karnik over his cup and then replied, "Nothing. I just like to tell people what my name means." Feeling a little dumb, Karnik wondered if he wasn't skilled in interrogation, since the man seemed to be using his tactic against him. It was that, or the Italian was just a great conversationalist. "Okay, nice one, Luciano," Karnik said as he relaxed and prepared to play the game. "Listen, we don't want to do you harm, and once we are through talking at some point, we will let you walk out of here. We just don't understand why UN personnel are here on US soil. Can you help me with that?" The Italian did. Even though he didn't know a great deal, it was enough. Over the next few minutes, Luciano explained how, even being up in years, he had been chosen because he spoke great English, and how he had been first transferred to the SCN over a year ago. The information didn't set well with Karnik. "So this has been the plan for more than a year?" "Yes," Luciano replied, a little taken aback by the aggressive manner in which Karnik had asked the question. "Forgive me, Luciano. My anger isn't toward you, but toward the idea that my men and I were led here." Forcing himself to regain control, Karnik looked over to the colonel in disbelief. "Oh, you weren't led here. No, you and your men were to be made an example of." "Example how?" Karnik was thankful about how things were going, even though he wasn't happy about the content of the information. Finishing the last of his coffee, Luciano sat thinking about the question. "Would you like more?" Luciano asked. Karnik was willing to cook the man a steak if it meant he kept talking. "Grazie," said the Italian. One of the soldiers instantly headed off into the other room. "Have you ever taken what is called a climate survey?" Luciano asked. Wondering where this was going, Karnik answered, "Yes, but they were anonymous." No, they were not. It seems that they had a way to know who filled them out, and that created a list, which was given to us, of potential radicals. Radicals? Karnik and the others in the room couldn't believe what they were being told. It was unbelievable to them that such a thing could have taken place, yet here they were. "Yes, that is why we are here, requested by your government due to the large number in your armed forces." Hearing the door open, Luciano turned his attention to the soldier bringing him his coffee. He welcomed the cup as he felt the caffeine working its way through his bruised body. Karnik's thoughts turned to the questions contained in the survey, and one stood out. "Would you obey orders to remove firearms from citizens of the United States?" Karnik blurted out. He looked around the room as the other soldiers did the same. "Would you follow orders to fire upon unlawful protesters in the United States?" The questions had seemed pointless at the time. They'd been mixed in with a great deal of other pointless questions. Now it seemed unreal that answering no to such a question could have led to current events. "At ease," Karnik said, and the room grew quiet. Karnik had to get more information while he could. Sipping coffee from the fresh cup, Luciano then continued, "Sergeant, you and your men were not supposed to escape. Rather, you were to be put on trial for all to see." Karnik raised his cup, took his final drink, and handed it off. Processing the new information, he asked, "Do you know how many of you are here?" "No, but the number is high. Lists were given out for beginning to remove guns from the civilian population days ago. That is what we were preparing for today, until we received a call that your unit had been spotted." Rage and disbelief filled the room, and it grew louder. Those present couldn't process what they had heard. Things were much bigger than they had seemed just 10 minutes ago. "What do they plan on doing now?" Karnik asked, focusing on what was to come. "I do not know. I am here." Believing his answer, Karnik had only one last thing to say before departing with the colonel. "Thank you, Luciano. We will see to your needs and send you on your way at the first opportunity." With Colonel Parker close by, Karnik turned and made his way back to the door through which he had entered.